Right, start with the drums. The drums for the intro are proper simple. The kick is from a dubstep Vengeance pack, and for the snare I used a cymatic sample. All the hi-hats are also from Vengeance and are arranged in this kind of groove. They are also absolutely caked in reverb to make them really wide. Add a crash. The whole chorus section doesn't even have any drums, which means we can skip straight over to the drop. I have this EQ on the kick that disables when the drop hits. This makes the kick way more impactful and much louder. There's also this really wide, overbearing ride that plays throughout the entire drop. This is there to fill out empty space in the drop for when we add our basses later. I also added this tiny hi-hat to fill in just a bit more space. Add a crash. And that's basically it for the drums. Let's move on to the synths. All the main sounds in this song are made in either Massive or FM8. But I'm sure you could recreate them in other synths if you don't have these two. This pluck is literally just a saw wave with an envelope on it, affecting a low pass filter. It's basically just deadmau5's famous pluck, but without unison. It is also covered in reverb, so it takes up more space in the mix. I also added a choir, using the spacious choir preset that's built into Ableton. This just has an OTT on it to make it louder and is also covered in reverb. It also has an auto filter on it, which I've automated to bring in more frequencies as the song progresses. This is what all those elements sound like together. Next, I just added the acapella, which I found on YouTube. I'll link this video in the description if you want it.
I could watch you for a lifetime. You're my favorite movie. 1,000 endings. You mean everything to me.
For the famous bell sound, I just used a preset in Massive called Bell Clarinet. I then just layered this with another proper simple saw pluck. The ARP from earlier comes back later in the track, this time playing different MIDI notes. You can see them on screen now. There's also this second pluck, which is playing the same notes as the ARP, but as a chord. This is practically the same preset as the ARP, but just has a longer decay on the envelope. There's also a few downlifters and impacts just to add more energy to this section. So that's basically it for the intro and chorus. Now let's move on to the bit you're actually here for. I made this sound using FM8. Here is what it sounds like without any effects on it. FM synthesis is kinda hard to explain, but I'll try my best to make as much sense as possible. Let's just start with the patch. I have the noise oscillator active, as well as oscillators F, E, and D, and A. Oscillator A could have been any other oscillator, but I chose A just to keep it separated from the rest of the patch. The way FM synthesis works: instead of each oscillator adding to each other, you use an oscillator to modulate another oscillator. So in my case, oscillator F is being modulated by oscillator E, which is also being modulated by oscillator D, which is modulating itself. Synthesizing like this means that you can make a ton of sounds which otherwise wouldn't be possible. Here is the preset for this patch. If you want to know more about FM, I'll link a video in the description that explains it much better than I can. Most of this sound, however, comes from the post-processing. Namely, this auto filter. The rest of these plugins are just there to make the sound louder and add movement. I've only got the standard edition of Ableton Live, which means I couldn't add the amp plugin, but I'm pretty sure Skrillex used this on a lot of his old sounds. Something of note is the EQ at the end, which I used to cut out the sub-frequencies and also this frequency here at around 4000 Hz. I then boosted the high end just so that it didn't lose any power in me doing that. I then just added some white noise to layer over the sound, and then that's it done. Up next is this high-pitched wobble sound. This is literally just generated using a screen filter. You could use literally any wavetable for this, it's going to have minimal difference. The most important part of this patch is definitely this sample and hold, which adds a lot more texture to this otherwise really simple sound. You do have to make sure that you fine-tune this correctly though, otherwise it'll sound really weird. Everything else though is just there to make the sound louder. Here's what the patch sounds like without any effects. Just like the wow sound, all my post-processing is there just to simply make the sound louder and wider. The most important part for this patch is probably this OTT. There's a lot of growl sounds in this song. These sounds have been absolutely done to death on YouTube. Just search Skrillex Growl Tutorial and you'll find hundreds of videos teaching you exactly how to make these sounds. They all follow basically the exact same process, so I'm only going to go through it once. This is the sound I'm going to teach you how to make. I used modern talking to make the sound, as most growls back then used this wavetable. It's modulated with both phase and ring mod, as well as the oscillator having bend plus minus on it. There is also a screen filter, which I have set to a macro so that I can automate it within Ableton. Without any effects, this patch should sound something like this. Something of note with growl sounds is their use of phasers and flanges to add a lot more movement to the sound. Other than that, the post-processing just comes down to making the sound louder again. Literally all growls are processed this way. Most of the sound just comes down to the wavetable you use in the beginning. Last but not least are all the beep sounds that he has throughout this drop. For these I literally just use a saw wave with a slight amount of sample and hold. Now just put all these elements together and you've got yourself a full drop. The breakdown is made up of all the same elements from the intro. The only added element is this super saw. For this I used a Gladiator preset, but it can be done in basically any synthesizer. There's also this mini variation in the middle of the breakdown. I made this simply by chopping up the chords and adding a bunch of Foley sounds, just random hi-hats and toms. There's also this square bass that plays over the entire breakdown. The song then repeats itself, playing the chorus and drop again, and then it's time for the outro. The outro just consists of a bunch of elements from the start and middle of the song, such as the ARP and the bell. The song ends as all these elements are slowly taken away, and an overbearing redux plays on the master,